A little while ago, I filmed a video, how to film in a small room. Well, what if your room isn't actually small, but has low ceilings? How are you able to film? How are you able to frame your subject exactly? Well, that's what we're going to this video, but I don't have a room with small ceilings, so I made my own with the sheet, and let's just jump into it. I'm so sorry. So first things first, when it comes to your framing, a low ceiling is going to limit your vertical height, obviously. And so what we'll want to do is we'll want to avoid low angle shots, as in the camera is low, looking up at us, as it's going to really accentuate that ceiling and make the space feel more claustrophobic. Unless, of course, that is the intended intention to have a more claustrophobic feel. If not, we'll want to avoid that, and you'll want to try to keep the camera more eye level or even slightly above, angled down. That way it does decentralize that ceiling. Now, a big thing I talk about in a lot of these videos is, creating depth and getting further away from your background. But the further away you get from your background, the more that ceiling is going to be noticeable. And so something you may want to do instead of being a wider shot is you may want to crop it a little bit more to more of a medium shot or medium close-up shot. That way then it's just not as in your face. Shakespeare once asked a very important question. Shall I sit or shall I stand? What should you do in this case? So obviously sitting down is going to be a little bit more beneficial, as it's not going to accentuate that ceiling, especially if you're a taller person where you're going to be kind of maybe touching the ceiling. Sitting down could be a little bit more beneficial. I should have had the key light on this side the whole time. The video's ruined, everybody. I also did a previous video talking about getting rid of the reflections in your glasses. And so if you are in a smaller ceiling type thing, sitting down can also help. So that way then your lights could be a little bit higher than you, and it could create a more flattering overall look. But even though sitting down can be a little bit more conversational and comfortable for some, some maybe have a better energy when they're standing or feel more comfortable when they're standing up. So in that case, as we said earlier, you want to kind of get yourself a little farther from the background, but also tilt that camera down a little bit so that way then we don't accentuate that ceiling. But let's get into lighting. So lighting can be a little bit trickier when you're filming in a smaller space, or at least with lower ceilings. Traditionally, I like to have my lights above my subject looking down. That way it kind of creates a nice shadow underneath your chin, kind of helps lean the face out. I feel like it overall looks a little more flattering. But obviously, if you're in a space with smaller ceilings, you're not able to kind of get the height of your lights or angle them. Unless, of course, you're sitting down, then you have a lot more flexibility. But if you are standing, you have a lot more limitations. So if you do use, traditionally I have a aperture softbox that's 36 inches or something like that. It's pretty big, but if I have in this room, I'm not going to be able to get it up and angle it down on me. So it's going to be a lot more straight on, which means the more powerful the light is, the more likely there's going to be shadows that are casted on the background, which we want to avoid as much as possible. So something we can do to avoid this is maybe use a panel light, which is a little bit smaller, less of a profile, that you can add a smaller softbox onto, or add some a pillowcase to kind of diffuse a little bit more. That way then you can angle it up a little bit more and get higher up to the actual ceiling. Or something else that we can do is, if we have the space, is to use that bigger light, but instead of shining it on us, shining it onto a bounce board. And that way then the light can bounce onto our subjects. And because it's slightly off the side, it will create that nice angle. We'll get that nice shadow on the side of our face. A white bounce board. You can use a big old white piece of construction paper, a bed sheet that's white, anything that kind of can help bounce that light nice evenly. So now something else we'll want to focus on is obviously a hair light. Now, what we like about the hair light is it helps separate ourselves from the background, and that way then it doesn't feel like we get lost back there. Now, you can angle a hair light off to the side of yourself, and that way just off frame, but in case you are in a smaller room with small ceilings, something you can do is get one of these little small aperture lights. So since these lights are so small, you won't need to drill in your ceilings. You just kind of put it right above your head, slightly behind you, and tape it down. That way then you have some light coming down to help separate it. And something else to give that illusion that there is a real light that'll be shining on you, you can have a real practical light behind you that's that's where that light's coming from. That way it gives it a purpose, opposed to just a random light source coming from the heavens above, you know? Now, something else you want to be aware of is your ceiling. is what kind of ceiling, what kind of room are you filming? Obviously, I just have a black sheet, so it's going to absorb the light opposed to bounce it, which is why it probably appears so much more dark than it actually is. But if you have white ceilings, white walls, that's going to bounce the light a lot more. And because it's a lot smaller, it's going to help light the whole scene better, which can be a benefit and also can be a negative depending on what type of look and feel you're going for. So hopefully some of these tips can help you film with lower ceilings. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, leave them down below and we'll see you next time. Love you.